Good morning. Good morning. We are here. We're in person. I'm excited to be here with you. I'm excited there are people in the room because when I looked on Hoover and there wasn't anyone, I said, where are they? They don't want to come, okay? But no, seriously, I'm glad that I'm thinking something to them. PowerPoint. So I am excited to be here. Once again, I'm Michelle Mason, Disability Services Lead for the Office of Workforce Development. And I'll be joined by Latanya Goodwin, and we left one person off of the presenter list. It was a last minute addition, Adrienne Williams. She is also reigns from the East Central Georgia workforce development area. And so we're glad to have her as well. And she'll speak to some experiences that she's had in her position, helping individuals with disabilities obtain services. And so disability awareness for workforce practitioners. And you saw the overview. The purpose of this session is exactly that. So you can get a broad understanding of disabilities in workforce and how to provide those services. The intention is not instructional. We're trying to make it as least nebulous as possible. You're not expected to be disability experts at the end of this session. Just versed enough to understand that if and when approached by someone with a disability, whether apparent or hidden, whether in person or virtually, that you have a better understanding of how to deliver a service and or refer them on to someplace that will be of a better service to them. Is that fair enough? And at the end of the session, we'll have some tools for you. But before we get started, if I can ask you to take just 1.5 minutes, not even 2 minutes, to look at the back area in the room and select a disability, whichever one you want. There are several there. If you can select a disability, it's a card and it has a disability written on the card in white chalk in my handwriting. So no judgment. Whichever one you want. And there are pens there also. If you want to take a pen with you, you're welcome to take a pen. Whichever disability you want. We have speech, we have deaf and hard of hearing, we have low vision blindness, mobility, learning disability, psychiatric, intellectual. You'll use that later on in the session. Okay, how many, can we get just a show of hands of who selected which disability? Okay, so how many individuals selected deaf or hard of hearing or hearing loss? Okay, we have 2. And for blind, loss of vision? 1, okay. Speech and language? 2. Mobility? 2. Psychiatric? Okay. Learning disability? 2, okay. Intellectual? 1, okay. It's a good mix. It's a very good mix. It's not, more than 2 for each, for any disability. That's good. Okay, we'll begin now and hold on to that. It's not clicking.
Okay, I'm just gonna sit here and hit next for you then.
Okay, there we go.
Okay. I'm gonna stand right here and just wait.
Okay, during this session, we have a lot of surprises, but we know how to work through surprises. We're in workforce, right? Every day we go to work, we can expect the unexpected. For someone to ask us to walk us through a normal day, in workforce, there are no normal days. Every day is a new adventure, and I appreciate that because it doesn't get dry, right? So, what we'll talk about today again, we will go through a basic overview, and that overview includes the definition. What is a disability? What is a disability as defined? Types of disabilities, signs of possible disability. You know, I think something's going on, I'm not exactly sure. Well, there's some signs you can take note of. And disability in workforce development. There is such a thing. And then we're going to take a journey through workforce services with the disability. Now, remember those cards you just selected, right? And so I'll give you a heads up. Think of those disabilities as you're learning about different aspects of that disability, and as you take that journey through the workforce system with that disability. And then we'll hear from our partners at East Central Georgia, LaTonya Goodwin, the director, and Adrian Williams, their disability services rep and employment network coordinator. You know, we have like 5 titles, right? So depending upon what's the need, right? But we're always ready to show up. And I say we because we at the state office are part of that group. So we'll hear from our partners and their experiences in providing services to individuals with disabilities. And of course, we'll leave time at the end for Q&A. So to begin, disability, according to Merriam-Webster, this is the textbook definition: physical, mental, cognitive, or developmental condition that interferes with or limits a person's ability to engage in certain tasks or actions, blah, 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 right? Okay. And then we have an impairment such as a chronic medical condition or injury, because you do not have to be born with it. You can attain it through life. Anything can happen at any time and change everything. And it prevents someone from engaging in gainful employment. That's the main part of this. Disability according to ADA, a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. What's a major life activity? Just about everything. Walking, stooping, bending, lifting, breathing. All of those life activities. Taking care of yourself, those daily living activities. So that's according to ADA. And what defines a participant with a disability in workforce development? Self-attestation. Any takers on that? With self-attestation, to come in, individual says, I have a disability. That defines disability. As long as they have declared so on the application, that they have a disability, it's signed by the individual and signed, of course, by workforce staff, disability. And ETA released a TEAGL recently to go along with this change about self-attestation and for data validation. So when information, medical information, anything that pertains to their disability is presented and by the participant to the workforce staff, it's then logged confidentially, and we have updated our policies to go along with that. So all of those resources are uploaded to our online library of workforce. And if you need help in accessing those TEAGLs and policies, just let me know and I'll make sure you get directed. Okay. And then lastly, request for accommodation equals self-disclosure. So if a person hasn't said they have a disability directly, but they ask for an accommodation, that then gives the understanding that they have disability. We're trying to become more flexible. Not to say that you haven't been, I haven't been in your individual offices to know what your services look like, but just in case there's someone on staff that hasn't, this information can be passed along to them. And I promise I'm not putting you in a hot spot. We have a new attendee, and I want you to be able to take part in all of the activities of this workshop. So before you get really comfortable, can you go to the back wall and select the disability, anyone you want, or you think you do? you would be able to handle. Yeah. Yeah. Can I ask which one? Mobility? Okay, we have two mobility. then. Okay. Types of disabilities. We have on the screen, you will see the types of disabilities, and under them, what you will see is the percentage of our population according to census. So, in looking at these statistics, on the screen, there are more individuals than we would imagine that are next to us that have a disability. Blindness and vision loss, 11% of adults. That's 25.2 million people. That's a city. Okay. And we have deaf and hearing loss, 1 to 2% of adults have deaf and hearing loss. And that's also those that were born with hearing loss and those that attain hearing loss later on in life. Because we know we begin to change as we get older, right? Yeah. But turn the TV volume up and people like, why is the TV so loud? It's not gonna be right? Okay, so. And then we have mobility disability. Again, these are things that happen when we progress in life and age. You know, that orthopedic doctor is not going anywhere. So, and that's about meaning disability, mobility disability. This is beyond wheelchair. There's a cane, there may be walker, different chairs that are needed. They may not have any prosthetic, but it's a mobility disability. Hip replacements require you to have parking spot by the door, specialized chairs in the office, etc. Intellectual disability. I'm going to come back to that. Speech and language disability. So there is speech disorder, which is part of this lane that impairs an individual's ability to speak. And there is the language side, which is the language that's necessary to carry a dialogue and to learn. And that's the basics of speech and language disability. Sure. Speech disability. Someone may, and I take time with speech and language because it's a challenge for some to understand that because an individual has a speech disorder does not mean that there's necessarily a learning or intellectual disability present. We're going to act it out, but we press the time. I want you to let not hear it. So I will not do the illustration of that. But then we have language disability, language portion of the speech and language disability, and likewise with speech. The language, there may be a challenge in identifying and pulling that language that is necessary to hold the conversation at a level that we feel is a conversation level. However, it does not mean the individual does not understand what you are saying. They may need it dictated in a different manner. They may need it broken down. So, speech and language. There's a large part of our population that have speech and language disabilities. And again, that is something that can progress as we age. And it does go along with other disabilities that we're not going down that lane. But I do have some supportive documents for you if you would like to learn more about it. Learning disability. That's a big one. 4 to 6% of Americans have learning disabilities. And so as we are expanding the workforce, we need to expand our understanding of the accommodations that are minimum that can be put in place to provide assistance for the learning disabled population. Psychiatric disabilities, mental health. We are looking at a time when 1 in 3 have a psychiatric disability. And we know partly why, that look at our world. Yeah. And I will not get into my own personal feelings about it, but it's apparent that there is a lot going on and has been going on. So people have a high level of anxiety. And this is documented that 1 in 3 adults, and now they're looking at stretching that back to our youth population. I'm talking 15. I spoke to an ER nurse, urgent care nurse, and she said our young people are the highest rate of population coming through the urgent care for just not feeling well, rapid that feeling well, they're not emotionally feeling okay. So psychiatric disability. And so what do we do when we're approached by someone that has a psychiatric disability, but they want to go to work, they have the right to work. And there may be some challenges present. But how do we deal with that? We'll get to that in a moment. Intellectual disability. Intellectual disability and learning disability are not one and the same. Intellectual disability means the individual operates cognitively below learning standards of 70%. So they may have an advocate that engages in services for them. They may not ever live independently. And when I say 70%, that is the intellectual abilities of an individual at 9th grade. Think of 9th grade, how old are we at 9th grade? 14, right? So this person should be able to operate at 14. Large part of this population operates well below that. Not to say they can't work. Groceries, in carts, laborers, they learn to masonry and carpentry, not the mathematics fanatics of it, but they do have the ability to learn on the job and work with given the proper assistance with accommodations. The likelihood that you will interact with someone with an intellectual disability in your local areas is lower than expected for the other disabilities. Because there's a state agency in place with partners that typically provides the service for this population. And it's Department of BDHDD, Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, and Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. They are typically in place to provide the direct services for individuals with intellectual disabilities. Next one. So how do we know they have a disability? What do we do? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What about like the agency that is fine?
They're a partner. That happened. But Aspire is a partner of DBHPD and Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. And full disclosure, I was an employee of GDRA for about 12 years or so. So just full disclosure on that. As a partner, Aspire has the ability to give those direct services. GDRA and DBHPD are the conduit. So they do all of the case management, get the case together, get the individual prepared to then move on to someone that wants to do the direct service of getting them job ready and out to work. That is okay. Recognizing signs. So how do I know? You know, this person walks in, how do I know they have a disability? I kind of think so, but I don't know. Some are more apparent than not. Some are hidden. But we're going to talk about those that are apparent first. And so someone uses a wheelchair. Well, we know that, right? And we know if they're walking with a cane, if they're visually impaired, and if they're deaf, and there's distinctive facial features for some disabilities, like aphasia. Big thing with aphasia, right? Bruce Willis was just diagnosed with stage when I heard that. Disability awareness. No one is exempt. Anything can happen at any time, change everything. Education and resources is the bridger to somewhat ensure that there's a continuation once everything changes. What do? Education, access, population. Distinctive facial features like Down syndrome. An individual with Down syndrome, there's a facial feature that is distinctive to that disability that would help you to recognize that there is a disability present. Use of a relay service. Hello, Mr. Jones. This is interpreter 34567. I'm calling for Mrs. James to speak to someone. That's indicative of someone that is hearing impaired or deaf. And so they use a relay service to speak on their behalf, and someone, conducting sign language and they're communicating. It's awesome, really amazing how technology has helped us. And then there's significantly slurred speech. Calling, they show up at your desk, so that's in person or virtual. And your speech is slurred. Now that, on the face of it, when you hear slurred speech, it should only be taken as possibly a speech disorder, potentially. We don't want to make the assumption that there's anything else going on other than that without asking the question. Do you need an interpreter? Do you have an interpreter to assist you through this process? Should I be prepared to provide you any additional accommodations? Because a person that slurs does not necessarily mean that they have an intellectual or learning disability. Okay? And then there's the hidden signs. Difficulty reading. When you give the application and it's taking a long time to complete the application. Everybody else is finished, but they're still they're struggling. Inability to follow the discussion. You're having the discussion, you're giving them instructions and directions. Question mark. Still not following. Elevated level of impatience. And in person and that can be virtual. I hear you virtual first. Those phone calls you get over and over and over and over and over and over again. And person they continue calling that something happens, then you back on one another. Well, they just keep calling. Well, there's something going on. That elevated level of impatience is indicative of a psychiatric/mental health disability. Possibly. And maybe that they're just having a bad day. But those are some signs. You may get an email and it's an email. Another email, send your email, send your phone. Same thing with the phone. Unrealistic expectations goes along with what I just said. I called you Friday, it's Tuesday. Why is it not happening yet? Why hasn't someone taken me through this process yet? Again, it could be this person's having a bad day, a bad week, because we all do, right? And given a situation, any one of us may operate at this level, but when it's over a period of time and there's no reason to be heard, then we may think there's a disability present. Change our directions, our sales, and how we handle the situation. Accompanied by an adult representative. Not typical that an adult comes in to the workforce office and services, and that they are quote unquote independently searching for employment and training. And they are accompanied by an adult who then is not just accompanying them, but they're also speaking on their behalf. They're also, that's indicative of a disability, intellectual disability. There may also be a mental health, psychiatric disability, anxiety at some level in being able to get through the process. Again, these are just signs. These are not diagnoses, terms, okay? This is just so you can have your eyes open. Flat affect. talking to this person, you're working with them through a workshop, you may be working with them individual, someone on your staff is working with them individual, developing that work plan and plan for work. And there's no excitement. Okay. Again, it could be a bad day. Someone might have, said something earlier. They may have had an argument before they got to the office. Anything could have happened. They had a certain phone call and they just take it themselves at that point. But outside of that, if that is the affect, it is not to be assumed that they are not motivated. There are some disabilities that present lack affect. It doesn't mean they're not motivated. It doesn't mean that they're not interested. It doesn't mean they're not engaged in what you're saying. But there are disabilities that, mental health disabilities, there are learning disabilities that prevent the quote unquote the normal reaction we're looking for from someone when we say, oh, you've been approved for your training. You've been accepted for this job interview. And it's, yeah, leprechaun kicks, right? I can't do it. Right. But it doesn't happen. You're wondering, what? I worked so hard for this. Well, they're working double hard to get to the place where you're at. So. Yes. So, disability and workforce development. How to effectively communicate with and for a participant with a disability. We lead with the person first. We don't lead with the disability. So it's no the blind guy. No. You know the deaf guy. Oh, no. John, who is blind. Jacob is a welder who has a learning disability. It's the person that leads. And I'll say this as lifelong placement in disabilities services, that in engaging employers, we always lead with skill. Always lead with ability. Always lead with the person being able to do the job. They just so happen to have a disability. How can we make the two work together so this person can begin to move forward? Billy, who is able to do job A, just so happens to have a learning disability. But he can do the job. They can complete the training. They complete the program. They just so happen to have a disability. We have to change our way of thinking about that. If you are struggling, ask, meaning if you're not exactly sure how to frame this in a conversation to one of your colleagues in the office, yeah, this person, but I don't know exactly how to describe what's happening. Ask for assistance. I'm going to say that, put that out here. Michelle Mason, disability service lead. That means that I'm there to answer your calls and emails about how to deal with this on the ground. How to effectively serve participants with disabilities. One, like everybody else, we provide services to people with disabilities who are seeking our services like anyone else. There are 4 standards that face it. Treat individuals like any registered participant. Do not assume, because a disability may be apparent, or even in the fact that they disclose they have a disability. There are nuances with disabilities. There are ranges. An individual may have a learning disability, but they have had accommodations and assistance their entire time going through the learning, through the education, the K-12 education system. And now they're at a place that they can be independent and they know what they need. Same thing for an individual that is hearing impaired, speech impaired, psychiatric. For the most part, they've been dealing with this their entire life or since they obtained the disability. They know what their supports look like. So we don't assume, we ask them. What do you do? How may I help? Listen with intention. How frustrated are we when we're talking to someone and they're on the phone? Or we're talking to them and they're texting. So imagine an individual who is hearing impaired and they're trying to read your lips. When we're hearing it here and you're speaking not in a tone that can be projected. And I can go down the list. Again, we have some treat tools for you at the end. Do not change anything without a request. That goes back to not assuming and just ask it. They are the best at describing what they need. Is this helping so far? Okay. Next one. 30 minutes? Okay. I want to zoom through. Uh-oh, we see numbers on the screen, right? Those numbers are stats, national stats. I don't pay attention to the year. I did the best bracket I could get. And so it is 2016, I think, 2017, but we're not far from that. And the numbers, where am I? With my other eyes, let's see, my 4 eyes. We'll look at national first. Nationally, we have 35.94% of our entire population who are employed. State population, we have 239.677 of a 10 million plus population who are employed of adult age. And adult age, I mean, it's 18 to 64. People working beyond 64, people working before 18, right? Those are just the numbers. A lot of individuals that are not employed, that are out there with disabilities. These are our numbers. And what we've done in the local areas, this is a report on the second quarter and fourth quarter employment rate, credentials, median earnings, and measurable skill gains. We all loves that, right? Measurable skill gains. Well, look at these numbers. Adults with who have informed us that they have a disability. Look at the disparity between the two numbers. 10,230 as opposed to 385 served. First, I will say that 385 is well below the true number. Individuals just have not disclosed the fact they have a disability for a number of reasons. And the main reason is the stigma that's tied to having said they have a disability, and the other is the treatment that they have received once disclosing the fact that they have a disability. Youth with disability, 6,512 as opposed to 385. That definitely is not a fact. And dislocated worker, 2,248 as opposed to 57. The employment rate, I mean, it's disturbing and it should. But I will say, to be safe, this information is as accurate as whoever is putting the information. And we know that old saying about data management, garbage in, garbage out. So if we don't have accurate information going in, we're definitely not going to get accurate reports. So I will say that next week. And that's just to show 2020 was on. In 2019 and 2020, there was no large difference. Well, maybe with COVID, people coming out. No difference. Okay, next slide. Now it's time for the fun. I wanted to get through all of that so we can get to our board game. I wish you had some music, like, Family Feud or Jeopardy or something. Yes. Brandy is going to find some Jeopardy or Family Feud or something music, game show music. I'm dating myself. Okay, can you all see this? If you are challenged to seeing it, it is in Hoover. It is slide, which slide? 11. Slide 11. If you open So remember that disability that you selected in the beginning? Remember all of this we went through, right? You heard all of this about disabilities. And so imagine you are this individual that has this disability, whether you were born with it or you acquired this disability somehow throughout life. However you got it, you got it. And now you have to figure out how to get from point A to point B in your life, or continue whatever it is you have been doing before acquiring this disability. You don't go to that workforce office. They help people get trained and out to work, independent. I'm gonna go walk up in there with this disability. And I'm gonna go through this service stream with this disability. They're gonna help me. Well, we gonna walk through and see what that looks like. You ready? Okay. Yes. We have journey through workforce services with a disability. We're going to start out with the individual with a disability engaged in Title I workforce system. It is up to you to decide which track you're going to take to get you to the end. The end being gainful wages through employment. The end is free. Now, there's no guarantee in this, but the chances are higher depending upon disclosing the fact you have a disability, requesting accommodations, and receiving said accommodations. It can happen at any point in this process. This is a scaled back version of what services look like out in the field. So we start up at point 1. Individual with disability engages in Title I workforce system. Welcome to the office. The individual discloses disability and SSI or SSDI benefit status. What happens at that point? Is the individual referred to internal disability resource staff like Miss Adrian back there in the room, who also helps with employment network services because they have SSI, you have SSI or SSDI? Is that what happens? Did you even disclose your disability? Just think of your office. I'm not asking you to raise your hand. Just think about it because this is for you. Or do they do B? Provided Title I services without addressing disability services. They disclose that disability. It's not addressed. Oh, okay, thanks for telling me. And then there's C. They disclose the fact they have a disability. Well, okay, now we're going to refer you over to GVRA. What is your walk? Is it A, going to disclose your disability and then move on to that disability resource staff? Is it B, you disclose the disability, nobody addresses it? Or is it C, you disclose your disability and you're now referred on to the partner, GVRA services? Okay, we're gonna look at track A. The track A is you disclose your disability, you will forward it to someone in the office that has that ability to provide that service for disability services. If you have Social Security disability benefits, they are versed in that and they can help you with that as well so that you understand the benefits that you're obtaining employment. And then what happens at that point though? Okay, you've moved on with that person, but what happens at that point? They continue with services. You spoke to someone that has I'm gonna call her the lady in the red jacket. You disclose the fact you have a disability. You work with someone on staff that is versed in disability services. What happens at that point? Does that person, do you move on?
Well, for me, I would ask that person if I'm trained and interested in pursuing. And so then, if we adjust all the accommodations that they may or may not need, and then I will refer them to that person that can help them, with
flip it and you're the person with the disability? Would you feel safe in asking for those accommodations? Would you feel safe in asking? And this is not to put you on the spot, I'm kind of sorry, but.
What training is available for someone in my case to have a disability, that's in my case, a mobility.
And you would feel,
That's what I would.
I'm not gonna answer that question, there are no heat seeking missiles in this room. We're all, meaning, I'm not gonna ask you, what does that look like in your office to get a reply? I'm asking, what would that look like in your office so it can get your wheels turning, thinking what it looks like now, and what it can look like later. Okay. So, if you look at this game, it could be any. If you look at this game, it can be any variation, but it depends upon the person that has a disability, and it depends upon the staff that are in place and their understanding and willingness to provide said services. And understanding that individuals with disabilities have the ability to move through the track of services like anyone else, given the opportunity.
That's why, because that's what you were saying earlier, that actually listening to them and treating them the same.
Yes.
And not just with a on their disability, because just because a person has a disability, they don't just always want to be identified. Don't identify me with a disability. Lord, I've been at these glasses so long, I know I got a disability.
I was gonna say, how many of us have a slight visual loss?
Yes.
You know?
And we have disabilities sometimes that we don't even know that's an identifiable disability.
What I loved in class was, school days, and we had to take out the LPs at 4. And we were diagnosing everybody in the class. You got this, you got double, you got this, you got that. But the joke is that there's something with all of us.
Yeah.
It's understanding that there is every single person in this room has something. It is more apparent for some than others. It is recognized even by ourselves more so than some others. Because you have some that walk around, they don't know that. They don't know. They don't identify. If I had time, I would show you a video that I had shared for another training of Monica from France. Monica has OCD. They moved that cup and she knew she had it there and she said, who moved the cup? And she said, now I want to die because I moved the cup. Because she looked so manic in the process, but didn't realize what she was doing to others around her because she didn't recognize it and address her disability. So it's more funny than I think. Share it. It's one of those, you had to be there to know. But so we do not run out of time because I do want you to hear from Latonya and Adrian. Okay. 2 minutes, real quick. Depending upon the track you take, again, can or may not lead to gainful employment in the end, but that's with anyone, right? We can do all of the things that we think are quote unquote right to the best of our ability in providing services, and at the end, it still doesn't pan out. But the fact is, the better fact of it is that we actually do it. And that we put supports in place so that it can be achieved. It has a better chance of being achieved than not. So again, this is in your PowerPoint. You can go through and look at it. And if you're like me with those books that we had growing up, you can pick different directions to go in, go away. So next slide, please. What did we learn? What did you experience during your journey? As we talked about all of that and walking through the process and what it could look like and what it could turn out to be, because it could have been that you got to training and all of your resources put in place, your accommodations from the workforce office, but the individual shows up at CNA training. And the accommodations are not duplicated or met at the CNA training, medical assistant training, phlebotomy training, whatever, welding, auto mechanic, warehouse training. there needs to be a bridger to connect whatever supports were put in place in the beginning, that they are continued to walk out in the next leg. And how will this experience, and these are some questions I want you to take with you. How will this impact you moving forward? Yes.
I was gonna say, since I self-disclosed and said that I have a disability, then I will hope that person, that representative will seek out, well, hopefully everybody that we work with, goes to training agency, will have that accommodation for that individual. Now that you know, because I said, Ms. Marshall will be showing up, she has a mobile. And we have things in place for her to be able to successfully complete this training.
That's a plan. Yes, ma'am.
One thing I want to add to what she was saying, you checking on saying what you want to give her versus asking her what do you need. So you gotta think in terms of what she wants versus what you want to give her.
Yes.
Most of the time, they don't self-identify, and we don't know if they have a disability or possibilities of a disability until they get trained. And then they have issues with the training program or the training provider, and then the first thing they yell is, I have a disability, nobody help me.
That's part of the first leg, the first track, if they don't disclose. I wanted you to think about that. As a person with that disability you selected, what if you don't disclose? Because there's some other things that you've heard or experienced, so I'm not gonna tell. I can handle this. I don't need it anymore. My disability is not going to stand in the way, because you have that group as well. I can handle this just like anybody else going through the system. I don't have to tell them that IEP was just for high school. I'm an adult now. I can do this. And they show up, bottom falls out. And it is disclosed, okay, without them having to say something's going on. What does school look like? You had a job before. Because adults too like this. They continue to go on that rat hamster wheel and they lose job after job. Well, how did you get the job? How did you obtain employment? Did anyone ever help you to get a job? What happened at that job? Has anyone ever said, addressed this issue with you before? No way to frame the question to get it out.
That was probably the question, you know, they don't identify, just like speaking to them and really listening will make you ask additional questions.
Listening with intent. That's part of the 4 basic standards. Listening with intent. Okay. And do you feel prepared and empowered? Now I give you everything. Hope to give you something. I got the tool and resources for you when you leave again. But do you feel prepared or better prepared, empowered to engage individuals who access services through your local areas who so happen to have a disability? And they disclose or do not disclose? Because that's the bigger question. Those that do not disclose, are you prepared for that? Okay. Next slide is Latanya and Adrian.
Thank you. Definitely deserves.
Michelle, you're talking about a journey, and I can tell you that support that she offers in her office in dealing with those that have disabilities and how we interact is invaluable. I am so appreciative of the resource that we have. Michelle leads with not only the technical knowledge, but the empathy to get you through. And I can tell you, we stumbled. You know, those numbers that she showed on the slide, they're staggering. These people, and I shouldn't even say, I hate to say it like that, but those with disabilities are coming through our offices, whether or not they're told them not. Here, and AJ gave a perfect example. Now, I can remember we had a young lady that we had put through several different wondering, you know, why she just not making it? Because, you know, everybody's, oh, there's something wrong. But something's wrong with that. people, she's an intelligent person, truly. But there definitely was a disability that we helped her determine that it wasn't anything that necessarily rose to the levels of security or SSDI, but it was an awareness so that she can make it through her journey to that outcome. So as I mentioned, we stumbled because we did say, oh, that person out there that she's just, we didn't give her anything. Not saying that, way. Not recognizing or saying that she's able. But then the next piece when you're encountering this is, you know that they want information. They're coming into us, they're taking steps, just like any of our other participants, walking through that door, wanting a job. And then when they get to us, and then we're not invited, right? Disability, or immediately going, well, GBRA, you're gonna refer you. I have no disrespect to GBRA, but we literally, just really recently spoke to someone, I do not want to be referred to. That's not what we were gonna do, but she made it clear. I do not want to be referred to GBRA. She had in, she wanted to be an entrepreneur, not go through the GBRA program, but she also did not want to get off of her benefits. So that was, so walking through that journey, I can tell you, it helped to have someone that is on staff, such as Adrian, and she'll tell you her background. So I got 5 minutes. So for where, I would say for that service delivery in a nutshell, is utilize, Michelle, her team. If you can hire someone that has that experience as well, Adrian has been a tremendous help. Also engaging employers and your training provider. If you're not aware, each employer that we interact with has to be ADA accessible. We should be out verifying, and as well as our eligible training providers. So you do that legwork and knowing which employers or board members, as well, my board members, I have my board chair is a workers' comp nurse, so she's heavily involved in the services that we are providing. They're challenging us. So having that support has been tremendous from our team. I want to give Adrian the opportunity to speak because she is a gold line that we were able to. Yes.
So speaking coming from Tanya and Michelle, my background is from disability education. So I was one of those people that they hated. We made medical decisions to determine if we got benefits. So I know what it looks like on the front end, and I know on the employment side what it looks like. The young lady that Tanya spoke about, and it's real important as you work with individuals and they do the application to try to get them to identify. Because a lot of folks who get benefits, all they hear is you can't go to work to get benefits. That's what my job is, to show them how it's possible to go to work and work with their benefits. So my job is not to try to talk them off the benefits. Let me give you information so you can make intelligent decisions based upon knowledge versus fear. And a lot of people with that, it took a long time to get those benefits. The last thing they want to do is have you say, come off of them. Okay. So getting them to identify is the first step. So with the Tanya's program, I work on the front end of the program, and on the back end, I do the eligibility on the front end. So when I see disability and somebody identifies, I have a conversation. This is what I do, and I can, because they've identified, say, tell me about your disability. Then we get into some conversations. So when I get on to the career coach, they have an idea what's going on. So they're not blindsided on that back end of things. And as Michelle said earlier, and I had an experience when I was with disability, young lady who was hearing impaired, went through the whole interview process. The people who interviewed her did not clue into the fact that when somebody was deaf, the speech was stilted. They never told HR. So when this young lady showed up there wanting to work, here's my demand that you got to give me. We weren't willing to do it, but it's not sitting in the closet. we've got to get those things for you. So it resulted in just a delayed start date, was all in that. But again, she's been probably in her past, been all these obstacles to going to work this here and there. So I'm just not gonna tell you. So you're gonna run into those situations. So as Michelle said, and we've been clued in through the interview process, we could have a conversation. But nobody said anything until I'm starting work today and you better get these things. In her favor, and Berkeley employers will do this, but when you're a state employee or federal employee, you're gonna get those things. So don't be afraid to ask for it from that standpoint. But utilizing the resources that you have available to you. Again, my background was disability. I worked with the project, work assistance, incentive and planning assistance, helping people go to work. So that's what I do to kind of allay those fears or let them give them information so they can make intelligent decisions about going on to work and not being afraid of losing those benefits and let them know what the safeguards are that are in place for them to be able to go to work. Michelle has a slide again. I love this slide. Equity versus equality. Okay. So what's equitable doesn't always equal to equality. We all got the same little measure, but we're not getting the same view. So it's giving that one person on the end 2 steps so we can all see the same thing. Kind of leveling the playing field with us by just providing those additional little things that are out there. And one other thing I'm gonna say to you to take away, a lot of disabilities, like Michelle said, people don't, you learn to compensate. So you don't consider it to be a disability, okay? But compensation, and if you just put a few little things in place, can be that little step to get into success versus letting it stumbling block. So use your eyes, use your ears, like Michelle said, listen, observe, and again, having those conversations too, are they doing this to breathe? Even though I'm not saying I got a visual impairment, but it was up here. You know, so kind of paying attention to what's going on around you so that you can be that, you know, cheerleader in the background, because I'm not going to do Michelle's time either. But you can do that little kick when you get somebody over that line and into employment.
Adrian's our rock star. That slide, I'm gonna say, those little things that she's talking about, accommodations. Accommodations. Accommodations should be no undue hardship, right? That extra box that fell on the egg didn't cause any harm to anybody else. So just thinking of those things you can put in place. Oh, the slides in Hoover, in the Hoover app, bring your attention to that. And the other document that's in there is disability etiquette tips. How to interact and or assist individuals with specific disabilities. At the first page is a generalized tip sheet. And then there are 2 pages behind it that speak to the specific disability. Okay, it's a quick PDF, but I also have for you something from our state ADA's office. In the box right there. Everyone can have 1 or 2 of these booklets in the state ADA's office. It's best practices when interacting with persons with disabilities. It is a customer service guide for state government agencies. So you all are welcome to have 1 or 2, okay? This is in your, any other questions? I know I went over time. I apologize. I'm a chat cat.